Next on Currents News, Pope Francis reacts to newly discovered documents about Theodore McCarrick, the former cardinal laicized over sexual abuse charges. A knife-wielding man attacks a group of Catholic schoolgirls in Japan, killing 2 people, including an 11-year-old student from the nearby Catholic school. Plus, wild weather is tearing across the U.S. and headed our way. One Ohio church had its steeple snapped in half, but people sheltering from the storm are calling it a miracle as the cleanup begins. And after years of preparation, Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio ordains 19 new deacons to the Diocese of Brooklyn. You'll meet the men now serving the faithful. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Emily Druby. New revelations have surfaced about Theodore McCarrick from an ex-aide. Documents obtained exclusively by Crux confirm that restrictions were imposed on the disgraced cardinal over a decade ago and alleges that Cardinal Donald Wuerl was in the know. The details of those restrictions were never made public until now. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports.
Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Peace be with you.
New allegations against Theodore McCarrick, former cardinal laicized over sexual misconduct and abuse charges. He was once one of the most powerful Catholic leaders in the U.S. A 10-page report obtained exclusively by Crux shows the Vatican imposed restrictions in 2008, ordering McCarrick not to travel. An ex-aide to McCarrick is responsible for releasing the documents. McCarrick claims Cardinal Donald Wuerl was aware of the restrictions and was involved in conversations about their implications. A spokesperson for Cardinal Wuerl denies the assertion. Wuerl recently resigned after controversy surrounding his handling of abuse cases when he was Bishop of Pittsburgh. In a new interview today, Pope Francis claims he had no knowledge of the sanctions, which were imposed over a decade ago during Pope Benedict XVI's papacy. The Vatican's former U.S. ambassador, Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, released an 11-page letter last August, claiming Pope Francis was aware of the McCarrick allegations.
Leggete voi attentamente il comunicato e fate voi il vostro giudizio. Io non dirò una parola su questo.
He is the one who has saved us.
McCarrick denies any sexual relations, but does acknowledge sharing his bed with seminarians in their 20s and 30s. Last October, Francis ordered a thorough study of the McCarrick case. To date, no results have been public. Tim Harfman, Currents News.
Here to talk about the newly obtained documents and the fallout is the editor-in-chief of Crux, John Allen, and Crux's Rome bureau chief, Inez San Martin. Why does it matter that Cardinal Wuerl may have known about the McCarrick restrictions, John?
Well, because one of the core issues in the broader clerical abuse scandals from the beginning has been not merely the crime of sexual abuse, but the cover-up of that crime. Who in authority knew about what was going on and failed to act? Now, if it is true that Cardinal Wuerl knew about these restrictions in 2008, but failed to enforce them, then that's an important piece of the puzzle here that speaks to the broader accountability question, which is precisely the question the U.S. bishops are going to be dealing with next month when they have their summer meeting and adopt new accountability measures. So this comes at a very critical time.
So Pope Francis is again responding to questions about whether he personally knew about the allegations against McCarrick. In an interview with Mexico's Televisa, he said, quote, "Of McCarrick, I did not know anything. Obviously nothing. I said that several times, that I did not know, no idea." Inez, why is this response important?
First of all, what has to be said is, even though the Pope is telling us that he talked about it several times and he told us several times that he didn't know anything, it's worth mentioning that he technically never said that out loud in public. We journalists never actually had the opportunity to talk to him about the McCarrick situation. We did talk to him when we were coming back from Ireland on the plane. We asked him about the famous report by Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, and he said, you know, that's what we have. You guys do your job, be professional about it, and make your own conclusions. But he never actually come out and say in public, I knew nothing, I saw nothing, I'd heard nothing. So it was for me, it was very interesting. It was very important to actually have the Pope say it. Why did it take so long? It's a completely different kind of worms.
John?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. But of course, from a political point of view, the significance of this is it is a direct refutation of the central thesis in that famous Vigano report. Of course, the former papal ambassador in the United States, which created such a sensation when it came out last August. And the central claim that Vigano made was that he briefed Pope Francis on June 25th, 2013, about the concerns about McCarrick, and that the Pope willfully ignored them, which is why Vigano actually said that the Pope ought to resign. Although certainly people around the Pope, speaking on his behalf, have denied that multiple times, as Inez said, this is the first time the Pope has done so in his own voice, and I think politically, if for no other reason, that's important.
Yeah, and also, if I might add to that, something else that is interesting is that the Pope, in the interview he gave today to Valentina Alasraki, what he said is it possible that I had that, did I have that conversation with Vigano? Did I talk to him for 2 minutes? Yes. Did he tell me that? I honestly don't remember. I cannot say if he's lying about that or not. But at the end of the day, I knew nothing. And I kind of know in the context of how that conversation went, which is the Pope is creating 180 people in a span of 30 seconds each. Yeah, is it possible that both are saying the truth? Yeah, it's possible.
What does this new information mean going forward when it comes to the Vatican's pledge to release documents, John?
Well, on October 6th, the Vatican promised actually, that the Pope had ordered a thorough study, that was the phrase used, of all of their records with regard to the McCarrick case, and that information would be released in due course. Well, here we are virtually in June 2019. We have not heard word one about the results of that study, and there is no indication of when we will. Clearly, I think today's revelations will increase the pressure on the Vatican to finish that study and to let us know what's in it, because it is very hard to answer the accountability question if we are still left unclear about who knew what when.
John and Inez, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
In Japan, 2 are dead, including 1 child, after a knife-wielding man attacked a group of Catholic schoolgirls at a bus stop in Kawasaki. Eyewitnesses say the suspect was carrying a knife in each hand and screaming, "I will kill you." Shock and horror as emergency crews solemnly work the scene of the attack, where 3 are dead, including the suspect, and at least 17 are injured, some of them seriously. It happened in the city of Kawasaki. Most of the victims, all girls, students at Caritas, a local Catholic elementary school founded by an organization of Catholic nuns in Quebec. The alleged attacker is being identified as a 51-year-old resident of Kawasaki. Authorities say he took his own life. Police have not yet released a motive. His victims, an 11-year-old girl believed to be a student at the school, and a 39-year-old government employee who was bringing his child to the bus stop. During a news conference, Caritas chairman expressed his anger over the situation, saying, quote, "My heart is broken with pain when I think of the innocent children and their parents who send their children to our school with love, who were victimized by this savage act." President Donald Trump also speaking about the heartbreaking incident while on a state visit in Japan.
I want to take a moment to send our prayers and sympathy to the victims of the stabbing attack this morning in Tokyo. All Americans stand with the people of Japan and grieve for the victims and for their families.
School officials say they will enhance security measures at the school, including adding more security guards, but they have not said how or if they plan on protecting students as they commute to school. Catholics have been targeted once again in Burkina Faso. 4 people are dead after a church was attacked on Sunday in a growing spiral of violence. Worshippers were gathered for prayers when heavily armed gunmen stormed the church and opened fire. At least 10 Catholics were killed in 2 extremist attacks in the African country earlier this month. Another controversial heartbeat bill is on the ballot in the U.S., this time in Louisiana. After passing the Senate in April, the House is set to vote on the measure this week. The bill bans abortions after the detection of a fetal heartbeat, which is usually around 6 weeks. This as the Supreme Court decides to uphold a provision of an Indiana law which prohibits abortions motivated by race, sex, or disability. Pope Francis spoke out against the deadly procedure yesterday, saying a child changes a family story.
Ma nessun essere umano può essere mai incompatibile con la vita, né per la sua età, né per le sue condizioni di salute, né per la qualità della sua esistenza. Ogni bambino che si annuncia nel grembo di una donna è un dono.
The Holy Father met with doctors and experts on prenatal care from around the world, thanking them for fighting the throwaway culture which condemns children to death if they are born with some sort of defect. There are 19 new deacons in the Diocese of Brooklyn. Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio ordaining this special group of men over this Memorial Day weekend, with their families by their side for the joyous occasion.
Respect and obedience to me and my successors.
I do.
One of the best days of Andrzej Lewandowski's life.
Amen.
On Saturday, he became a deacon.
So I am very happy and I am ready to serve God and to save the church.
Lewandowski says he couldn't have done it without the support of his daughters and Maria, his wife of 37 years, who stood at his side every step of the way, even being there during his training.
People should know the faith very deep, and we got that.
It was incredibly amazing because my dad was beaming, and so therefore we saw this light.
Seeing the smile on his face, honestly, at the altar, it's unbelievable. My dad finally accomplished a really big dream.
And the gift of the Holy Spirit.
Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio ordaining 18 men as permanent deacons, meaning they will serve the church forever as deacons, and one man as a transitional deacon. He's preparing for the priesthood. The bishop thrilled to see so many ordained.
It's really a great day for the diocese. People still believe in the church. They have confidence. They want to serve the church. They want to serve God's people. It's a real shot in the arm.
This class of deacons will also help provide wonderful diversity, like Anwar Iqbal, who's originally from Pakistan.
I feel so happy because from last 25 years, there was no any deacon from Pakistani community here in New York.
Deacons are clergy who can perform sacraments like weddings, baptisms, and funerals. They can also proclaim the gospel and preach at Mass. Most of the new deacons are married, and with their wives, family, and friends looking on in admiration, the deacons promised lifelong obedience to the church, prostrating themselves and praying for guidance. Following the ordination, the deacons received word on their parish assignments. Francis Cuffey is going to Holy Cross in Flatbush, and he can't wait.
But it's a fantastic thing. I felt the power of God in my life, and I'm ready to go to preach the gospel to the ends of the earth.
With the church behind them, God in their hearts, and family by their sides, these deacons are now ready to serve the Catholics living in Brooklyn and Queens. 4 priests will be ordained by Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio this Saturday. The ceremony will take place at St. Joseph's Co-Cathedral in Brooklyn at 11 a.m. The ordinations will also be live streamed on Net TV. There's a lot more news headed your way.
A Queens priest is sworn in as a Navy chaplain and will minister to thousands of service members. I'm Tim Harfman, and that story is coming up.
Devastating storms ravaged the Midwest, claiming the lives of at least a dozen people. And decades after Private Daniel Edward O'Connor died in the sinking of the USS Dorchester, his local parish makes a surprising new discovery. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. A Queens priest is about to be forged by the sea, leaving his Douglaston parish to serve God and country. In ministering to the Navy's Catholic faithful, Father Mark Bristol will also be fulfilling a dire need. But as Currents News' Tim Harfman reports, he's no stranger to the U.S. Navy.
So help me God. So help me God.
Congratulations. An emotional Father Mark Bristol being sworn in as the Navy's newest chaplain. The ceremony taking place at St. Anastasia Church in Douglaston, Queens, where the priest has been assigned.
I feel moved. Moved spiritually, moved physically, brought to tears.
Father Bristol is no stranger to the Navy. The Brooklyn native enlisted in 2002 at the age of 17. He was deployed throughout the Mediterranean on the USS Mount Whitney, the flagship for the 6th Fleet. During his naval service, he heard God calling him to become a priest. Now he's returning to the sea to meet a need.
Currently, there are less than 47 priests in the military, and many of our sailors, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen go out to sea without the ability to go to Mass or receive the sacraments.
Father Daniel Mode, a friend of Father Bristol's, presided at the commissioning. A naval chaplain himself, Father Mode says the need for more chaplains is extreme. Father Bristol will be transported by helicopter to other ships to celebrate the sacraments.
Think about the military, the Navy, the Coast Guard, and the Marine Corps. If you put all that together, that's about 600,000 persons who are deployed throughout the world. Of that, about 20 to 25% are Roman Catholic.
Father Bristol is returning to active duty on July 1st. He'll be stationed on board the USS Theodore Roosevelt aircraft carrier, patrolling the Pacific for 2 years. He'll minister to nearly 6,000 service members of all faiths.
I'll be meeting their spiritual needs, providing care for those of not of the Catholic faith, of any faith, and also advising the commanding officer on issues of morale and ethics.
Henry and Mary Maccheroli, parishioners of Our Lady of Miraculous Medal in Ridgewood, have known Father Bristol since he was a seminarian. They say he makes a perfect fit to be a chaplain.
He's a very charismatic priest. He works very, very hard. He cares about all types of people.
And as he leaves the Brooklyn Diocese, Father Bristol describes how he feels towards the men and women he says have been instrumental throughout his vocation.
A tremendous amount of gratitude, because you formed me to be the priest that I am today. And wherever I go, no matter where I go in the world, I will always be a Brooklyn priest.
A Brooklyn priest serving God and country. In Douglaston, Queens, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
Around the nation this Memorial Day weekend, Americans honored soldiers who made the ultimate sacrifice. On Monday, Catholics from the Brooklyn Diocese gathered inside cemeteries to celebrate masses for the fallen heroes. Auxiliary Bishop James Massa was the main celebrant at this liturgy at St. John's Cemetery in Middle Village, Queens. You can read the full report on that mass in this week's tablet newspaper. Also on Memorial Day, One Bell Harbor Parish held a mass to remember the fallen soldiers in their community. But this year they made a fascinating discovery. One soldier who died in a tragic attack during World War II was an active member of their church. Once again, Tim Harfman reports.
Catholics gathering in Bell Harbor on Memorial Day to honor the nation's greatest, the war heroes who lost their lives defending the country. This year, there is someone new to remember, Private Daniel Edward O'Connor.
I had heard years and years ago about a boy from the parish who was on the ship, and the only thing I heard was his name was O'Connor.
That boy Monsignor John Bracken had heard about grew up to be Private O'Connor of the U.S. Army. On February 3, 1943, he was steaming across the Atlantic on the troop ship, the SS Dorchester. A German U-boat was stalking them. Off the coast of Greenland, torpedoes were launched and the Dorchester sank beneath the waves. The World War II tragedy made famous because of the 4 chaplains who died after giving away their life vests to save others on board the ship. Few knew about Private O'Connor, even though he was from St. Francis de Sales. So Monsignor Bracken, the church's former pastor, searched the parish's archives to learn more. Daniel received his first communion and confirmation at the church and graduated from the parish's elementary school in 1932. He was a good student with a 92 average and got an A in conduct. So that everyone will always know about Private O'Connor, a tree has been planted in his honor.
To see a connection, to say these are real people, they went to the same school I did, and look at what they've done, I must never forget.
The 4 chaplains have already been saluted in a similar way with a plaque outside the church dedicated to the Catholic priest, the rabbi, and the 2 Protestant ministers who went down with their ship.
Why not signal out these men as symbols of the contribution that was made by this community in the great effort against the Nazis and totalitarianism.
75 years after Private O'Connor died in the sinking of the Dorchester, A Memorial Day parade stepped off in Bell Harbor. Watching the march, Michael Noon, a second grader at the church's Catholic Academy.
They served and tried to help us, and they protected us.
And so that they are always remembered, St. Francis de Sales Church has installed a plaque and planted a tree. In Bell Harbor, Queens, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
The Trump administration could alter the way it assesses climate change. According to a New York Times report, President Trump wants to limit what can be published in climate science reports by planning to only show effects of climate change through 2040, while current models go through the end of the century. The violent storm system slamming America's heartland is headed for the tri-state area this week. At least 12 people across 3 states are dead as the violent storm swept through the Midwest. One church in Ohio was damaged during the suspected tornado. The wind snapping its steeple in half and causing a partial roof collapse. Cleanup in western Ohio began today.
This is going to be tough for this community. It was hit hard. It's going to take a while to recover, and the federal government's going to play a role. I also want to be sure and tell the people who are in these homes that our prayers are with them, our hearts are with them.
Dozens of tornadoes smashed homes and businesses overnight, blowing out windows and forcing many roads to close down. Forecasters warn of more powerful storms tonight from the plains to the tri-state area. Still to come on Currents News, how the Brooklyn Diocese is honoring the former Patriarch of Antioch. And thousands showed up to walk for a cause in Queens over the weekend for the annual From Here to Haiti walkathon. We'll be right back. Maronite Catholics in the Diocese of Brooklyn gathered to remember a former, much-loved leader of their Eastern Church. Cardinal Nasrallah Boutros Spire, Patriarch Emeritus of Antioch, died on May 12th at the age of 98. Bishop Gregory Mansour celebrated a memorial mass in his honor at Our Lady of Lebanon Cathedral in Brooklyn Heights on Sunday.
For 25 years, he was the head and father of our church, and he was so engaged. He loved Lebanon, he loved its independence, he loved its quality that Pope John Paul II said, more than a country, it's a message, and he loved his church. And he was stable and dignified and loving.
Spire was elevated to cardinal by St. Pope John Paul II in 1994. He resigned as patriarch in 2011. Finally, tonight, children from the Diocese of Brooklyn walking to raise money for another Catholic school more than 1,000 miles away.
We're about to start. Y'all ready? Yeah! Remember the first 16 people.
The annual From Here to Haiti walkathon in Bayside, Queens raised nearly $4,000 for a small school in the Caribbean island nation. The funds raised will be used to build a well so that children can enjoy fresh water while they're studying. The priest who runs the parish academy is thrilled and said he will be offering this week's Ascension Mass for their good friends back in Brooklyn and Queens. That is Currents News. I'm Emily Druby. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.